Tim Kurkjian. He has forgotten more baseball than I know. ESPN Major League Baseball reporter, senior writer, and he has been named to the Writers' Wing of the Hall of Fame. And as of 2022, Career Excellence Award winner, inducted into Cooperstown this summer. Who would have thought that Tim would get in before Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens?
Well, I certainly didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think it would ever happen for me, but I think this is going to be the largest disparity in size between the player that's selected and the writer that's selected. I weighed in at 140 this morning, Dan, so giving up at least 140 to Big Papi.
And there's no steroid trace with you, is there, Tim?
Well, 5'4.5", 140, and I can bench about 60. That I don't think there's a possibility of steroids. No.
If somebody didn't know the results of yesterday, how would you explain what happened?
Well, I would explain what happened yesterday. Boy, I hope I say this the right way. This is the most difficult process, the most difficult job that I've ever had in 42 years of covering baseball, is trying to figure out what to do with a ballot, say, like this. What do we do with Bonds and Clemens? And are they in a different category than David Ortiz? And is he in a different category than Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez? Those are the things that you have to go through. So I don't want any sympathy, neither do the writers. We're just saying this is a really difficult process. So somebody got in yesterday, David Ortiz, who I voted for and I believe should be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. But the rest of it is confusing. And there are no more right answers anymore, Dan. I fill out my ballot, and I have for 31 years. When I look at my ballot, every time the last 10 years, I look at it and say, well, I didn't do this right, because there are no more right answers. It bothers me when people would say to me or anyone else, you did it wrong. I'm not sure you did it wrong. I'm just not sure you did it right. That's because there are so many unanswered questions to all of this, and we need a little bit more clarity moving forward.
There's so many people who say the following. Well, Bonds was a Hall of Famer before. Clemens a Hall of Famer before. But I disagree. I think if you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer, and a Hall of Famer wouldn't use steroids, performance-enhancing drugs. Bonds was the best player in the game. Clemens had a run with Boston, but then he went to Toronto. Like, just trying to sort all of this out. Like, A-Rod got popped twice. Big Papi with the Mitchell report. I don't know what is hypocritical and what isn't with this, Tim.
Yeah, again, Dan, this is what I run into every single year for 10 years when we vote. And I'm not quite sure what to do every year. Yes, Bonds was a Hall of Famer before the late 90s with 3 MVPs. Clemens was a Hall of Famer before the late 90s with 3 Cy Young Awards. And yet, my dear friend Dan Shaughnessy says, if you shoot 33 on the front 9 and you cheat on the back 9, you're disqualified for the round, which is essentially what you're saying. I'm saying it's hard to argue with that. And yet at the same time, this is baseball compared to golf. Golfers, PGA Tour players call strokes on themselves, where baseball players were encouraged during that Bonds Clemens time to do whatever it took to win. And there was this tacit agreement going in Major League Baseball. No one's testing, no one's checking. You're going to get away with this. The other guys are doing it. So again, this is where it leads to all sorts of confusion. But from 2005 on, I see a little bit of clarity that we were testing and checking from then on. Alex Rodriguez, got popped twice, as you said. So did Manny Ramirez. I think they're in a different category than Bonds and Clemens, but you can disagree with me, and I understand why. It's just really hard to try to put all this together. Dan, the easy way out is to just say, if you have a connection to PEDs, you're not getting my vote, period.
Yeah.
The other easy way out is to say, I don't care what you did. If you're one of the 10 best players on the ballot, I'm going to vote for you. But I think there's nuance to it, and I think you have to look at each case individually, and that's where it gets virtually impossible to do this right.
And also with Curt Schilling. Like, I don't like Curt the person with what he represents or his tone, but I would put him in the Hall of Fame. I saw him perform on the biggest stages. I didn't think he played for great teams until he got to Arizona, and he wanted the ball. He was a gamer. He was clean, but I don't know it likability factors in whether it's conscious or subconscious here. How do you explain Schilling not as a Hall of Famer?
Well, like Bonds and Clemens and like Ortiz, I voted for Schilling every year.
Yeah.
Now, some of the things he said and done recently make me uncomfortable, but I'm voting on him as a baseball player whose careers ended 15 years ago. And his political views today are not going to sway me from voting for him. But again, a lot of people look at it differently. And I totally understand that. He is not an easy case either. And he's not Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux great. There is some borderline there.
Yep.
But when you look at the postseason, you look at the rest of the numbers, he's a Hall of Famer for me. I repeat, I voted for him every year. But the character clause comes in for certain players. I'm just not real comfortable being the moral arbiter of all these things, but we have to be as voters these days.
Explain how Clemens and or Bonds get into the Hall of Fame.
Well, they could be on the today's player ballot in committee in December. I've been on 3 of those committees, Dan. It's a fascinating process. 16 guys in the room, media, executives, former players. And if one really powerful person in the room can sway the argument, that's how you can get 12 out of 16 votes and get in the Hall of Fame. My experience on these committees is that the former players, and to a lesser degree, the executives, are going to be harder on anyone with a connection to PEDs than the writers are. So this thought that, Bonds and Clemens are going to go on this new ballot in December, which I think they will, and therefore they'll cruise through, as did, Jim Codd and Tony Oliva and Alan Trammell and Jack Morris and Harold Baines in recent years. I just don't think it's going to go that way because those guys don't have a connection to PEDs. So you better be careful what you wish for going up against the players who are in the Hall. I'm not sure they're going to get their vote. I'm not sure, but it's going to be very interesting.
And we always talk about, well, such and such didn't test positive. Well, Sammy Sosa didn't. I mean, he tested positive for a corked bat. Why is Sosa so far down the list?
Well, that's a really good question, Dan. I think it's in part because he is a symbol of the steroid era, fairly or unfairly. And I had someone explain to me, I'd never thought about this. If, say, he had hit 50 homers 3 different times instead of 60 homers, maybe he would get a lot more support. But I think people look at him and say, who is the steroid era? Who's the number one symbol? I think some people point at Sammy Sosa. If he wasn't so dominant during those few years, maybe he would get more votes. But bottom line is, he has a chance to go on that ballot in December also. And it'll be really interesting how he and Schilling and Bonds and Clemens and maybe others do if they're indeed on the ballot.
Altuve is going to be interesting when we get to that point. But, he is the face of a cheating scandal. Nothing else attached to that. But how do we look at something like that as opposed to PEDs?
Well, that's a really good question. The way I look at it is if Jose Altuve has Hall of Fame numbers when his career is over, and I think he will, then I would vote for Jose Altuve. I think I'm in the minority on that. I think people are going to look at this and say, well, he cheated. Now, are we certain that he cheated? Are we certain that he was taking the pitches and listening to the bang of the trash can? I'm not positive about that. And without positive proof, and I'm still not sure if you know what's coming, that automatically you're going to hit a home run. Surely it's going to help. But I think Altuve is going to be an interesting case when his Hall of Fame possibility comes up. But I repeat, as of now, I would vote for him for the Hall of Fame.
It's always great to talk to you, and congratulations again going into Cooperstown. This is going to be sort of like Aaron Judge and Altuve at second base. You and Big Papi standing up there at Cooperstown. You got to stand right next to him, right?
Well, at some point, I probably will. But let's be clear, Dan, all kidding aside, the players are the players and the writers are over here. So if I stand right next to them, it's only a physical thing, nothing more than that.
You get a plaque or a bust?
Uh, I think I get a plaque. I'm not even sure. I think if I get a bust, I'll be the only one with a bust that's actual size, which should be.
They can do your whole body, like not just your head. Oh, great to talk to you, Tim. Thank you, buddy.
Okay, Dan. See you.
That's Tim Kurkjian. What I love about Tim, and there's a lot of things to love, is that he wants to talk about the positives in the game. Like he cares about the game and moving it forward.